You're listening to the Mind Your Business podcast. Today, we're talking all about valuable lessons learned from seven-figure business owners. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm James Wedmore, and I've built a seven-figure internet business that offers the financial freedom to do what I want, when I want. And I'm the first to say that hard work and hustle are not essential ingredients for your success. So, how do you build a thriving business from the inside out? This is the Mind Your Business podcast, featuring myself and co-host Phoebe Mroczek. All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the call. This is James Wedmore.
And I'm Phoebe Mroczek.
And this is the Mind Your Business podcast, where we talk about everything mindset, the entrepreneurial journey, if you will, everything that it takes to create success from the inside out. Phoebe, how you doing?
I'm great. I love the name.
You're always great.
I am always great.
We should schedule a podcast when, you're having one of those days. Do you ever have one of those days?
I do, but then I get so excited to record that I'm always great.
You got to pump yourself up. We pumped ourselves up before this episode, didn't we?
We did. We had a little music break.
It was a little underwhelming. We were trying to crank music up, and it was like, a little like iPhone speaker. It's like, but we got the gist of it. But I think that's important, especially because we're both reading a book on flow right now, aren't we?
We are. I have been working on my power posing, and at the Business by Design workshop, one of the attendees gave me these selenite crystals. Or actually, you got some too.
Yep, we did.
And so I have them all around in the four corners of my apartment, and they're supposed to help with communication. So right before the call, I went and I grabbed one, and now I have it on my desk.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, mine are sitting on my desk too.
Oh, cool.
So right there.
They're supposed to be in all four corners of the room, apparently.
Now you tell me.
You're welcome.
Well, we are both reading The Rise of Superman. I think we will have some conversations about flow in the future. That seems to be a popular topic for entrepreneurs, talking about mindset and all that type of stuff. It's fascinating. I'm really enjoying the book thus far. They mention, extreme athletes. And it's really cool because I grew up knowing all these people, from Tony Hawk and Danny Way. I'm like, oh my gosh, these were my idols when I was a kid. I, loved surfing and skateboarding, and there they are. And, basically what I'm learning right now is how they've progressed their sport faster than the average sport gets progressed. And they're attributing it to this thing called flow. So we'll do some great topics on it in the future, and how we as entrepreneurs can get into our own flow state. Hopefully we don't have to go skydiving before we do it. But, Tony Robbins has been talking about this for, I think, 100 years, getting into peak states, right? What I like to do, the type of brain that I am blessed to have is where I'm just looking for connections. I'm looking for similarities. I'm looking for where this guy over here in psychology is talking about this, and that guy in personal development is talking about this, and this woo-woo person's talking about that. And then I go, oh my gosh, they're all the same thing. It's just a different label. One's got a scientific term, one can measure wavelength, and one is just kind of giving it a cool term. And I see it with the vibration conversation, the energy conversation. It's about raising your vibration, getting into what Abraham calls the vortex, to a flow state, to receive and to, step into what you're fully capable of. And I think we try and do that even just getting on a podcast. Hopefully, sometimes.
I totally have to get in the zone. Like, I'm not always just ready to turn it on and here we go and we record. But I also find it fascinating that, they say that all these little coincidences that happen are really
synchronicity, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's that's when you really know that you are, you are aligned or you're in flow. And I feel like in the last even 3 weeks, the word flow has popped up so many times for me. And I'm like, what? Everyone's talking about it now around me.
Well, then we might as well, I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't want you to leave this, talk about synchronicity, but the most synchronistic piece was that we were both gone, as we've stated a few times. We both took a little hiatus, and then we both come back and start talking about the same book that we're reading at the same time, and we're within 5 pages of each other.
Yeah.
That's nuts. It wasn't hey, you go read this, I'll go read it too. It was out of all the books on the planet, there are a lot of books out there. We're both reading the same book. So let me ask you, how did you, because the book isn't a new book. It was written a couple years ago, I believe. But what caused you to start reading the book?
So I got into a conversation with a girl named Jackie, who is like a flow specialist. I don't know what her actual title is, but she and I were talking, and I just said, are there any books you would recommend that I read? And she goes, there's this one book called Flow, and the next one is The Rise of Superman. And so I said, okay, well, I'll buy the Flow book because I felt like it was a good book to actually hold and have and highlight. And then I bought the audiobook of The Rise of Superman, and I just kind of started them both at the same time. And The Rise of Superman, I'm just so into audiobooks at the moment that it was so easy for me to turn it on, go for a walk, and I got really into it. And I'm definitely a big fan of extreme sports, but I think we mentioned on a previous episode that I don't know any of the names of these people.
Yeah, I did.
So like you, when you're, I wish I had known. I mean, I know who Tony Hawk is, but I met him a couple months ago, and I wish I had known that he was this guy that I was going to be learning more about.
You met him?
Yeah, at the Mastermind Talks.
My goodness. And you didn't know who's Tony Hawk?
Well, he walked straight through the crowd, and apparently
you didn't
nobody
recognize him. Oh, yeah. Yeah, really tall, right?
Yeah, he's huge, and he's a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And, I could appreciate what he was talking about in terms of, you could definitely tell he was leading the industry and just really making a name for skateboarding. And it was really cool to hear how he really got, he kept saying I was in the zone and I didn't really know what I was doing, but nothing else mattered in that moment. And then now it's coming up. I'm like, oh, right. That's what he was talking about. That's who he is. All right, I get it. It all makes a lot more sense.
Well, gosh, we could talk so much more about this and not ever get to what we want to talk about today. So I'll restrain myself from further tangents. Okay, so you had someone who is a flow expert, as I call him, a flow authority. Tell you about that. You like that? A flow authority. I had someone in the mastermind that I'm in. I'm in Jeff Walker's mastermind, and she just wrote an email to the group and was like, so I just read this book in 2 days. I'm totally geeking out about it. You guys got to get it. And normally I've got so many books on my list and I'm like, oh, good, I need another book recommendation. But I, happened to just have finished another book and I was like, okay, great. Yeah, it was awesome. So, that's a great segue. I hope it's a good segue. Speaking of mastermind, I just got back from my mastermind. It's a Jeff Walker mastermind. And we'll probably have some great people in that group to shout out to you. But we just did 2 days there and then went into a 3-day event that I know some of our listeners and customers were at because I got to see some of you and hang out with a few of you. So shout out to all of you guys. And it was such an extraordinary week that I was like, okay, stop the presses. Phoebe, stop the presses. We have to talk about this. So in today's episode, I want to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 takeaways, lessons, observations from my experience at this event. So we're going to set the stage for a moment and, let you know where I was and what that event was all about. So the first 2 days, does that sound good, by the way? This will be one of those, oh gosh, James is dominating the episode conversations, but Phoebe, the voice of the people, will be there to pry, get curious, and answer questions or ask me questions as I ramble.
Definitely. Right. I knew you were so excited about this that we were like, well, we have a bunch of other episodes we should do. And you're like, no. No,
because I'll forget it. This is my way of taking notes or how you come back from an event with notes and then you're like, okay, let me type these up and archive them. Well, my cheat method is just to do a podcast about what I would be taking notes on so I can go back and listen to myself and hopefully don't sound crazy. So let's set the stage for you first. First of all, this is a mastermind group. We've had an episode on what is a mastermind group. We're big fans of masterminds. I run my own mastermind, but this is a mastermind that I pay for and I pay a lot of money to be a part of, but there is an exclusivity, it's an application process, but these are you have to be at a 7-figure level in an online business. And this is my first year. I'm just completing my first year being in this group. The group's been around for a long time, so I kind of felt like the latecomer, new kid on the block. The right stuff. And, I said at the intro, there's 7-figure business owners, but there are 8 and 9-figure business owners in there as well. You're in that room, you're sitting next to the CEO of Hay House. Wow. Unbelievable, extraordinary people. So we're getting into how that really shifted a lot of stuff in my life, just playing a bigger game and being like, oh, so that's possible. Okay, great. And that was 2 days. So there's learning, there's sharing, there's Q&A, there's hot seats, there's all this type of stuff. Then there's just networking and hanging out with amazing people. We're everyone you're sitting next to is just a total badass. So it's you just want to talk to everybody and tell me something awesome. Just start talking, and let me just take notes. So that's kind of where you're at for 2 days, which is pretty. And then you're like, I'm done. Like I could go home and go to work for a month, right? But then after that, Jeff hosts a brand new event called LaunchCon. And it's 3 days with, I think it was 900 people there.
Wow.
And
open to the public?
It was open to the public. It's $1,000 to go. And I'm going to say this for the record. This has nothing, there is nothing in it for me. This podcast was not sponsored by Jeff in any way. But I've been to a lot of events. Like, I wouldn't call myself an event junkie, but I believe I got to where I am. And we'll do another episode on the power of events because I was actually talking about this. We brought our project manager to this event, and I'm so glad we did. So we'll get into that in a minute. But I told her, I was like, I think the only reason I got to where I got to in my business and like didn't give up is because in 1 year I went to 15 events. And
wow.
then the next year I went to like 6. And today it's a little harder to go to more than 2. But this is hands down, it's the best event I've ever been to, marketing event in my entire career of 8 or 9 years of going to events. That was the best event I've ever been to.
And we'll talk more about why it was so great.
This whole podcast should give you a glimpse into why.
Yep.
But here was the number one reason is that it was members from this mastermind that I just kind of bragged about, 7, 8, 9-figure business owners who all presented. So not only did I get to hang out with them and, chill with them for 2 days, but then they all crafted, not all of them, but like there was a good handful of them, and they crafted like extraordinary presentations for everyone. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Is there a theme going into it? Like when they are presenting, is there a theme for the entire 2 days, or is it just...
Well, it's 3 days for them, right? So the theme was, Jeff Walker's product launch formula, which is his very simple launch model. And it's every single one of them talking about some nuance of it, whether it's copywriting or how to do your videos or how to create surveys and segment your list or what to do after the cart opens and how to deliver better products and create better offers. So it's instead of like one person's talking about how to sell products on Amazon and then the next person's talking about like, how to market your local business. It was like all built on the same thing. So you're not just like split in 7 directions. Like I should do an app, as I should create an ebook. So it was all like built on top of itself. So it was really great.
Got it. So they're like, the speakers are so inspired from the 2 days of masterminding and then actually go and kind of keep that momentum going forward and then present to the public in the 900 people event for over those 3 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, there's 5 things I want to share. And Jeff said this multiple times. Speakers said this multiple times. And you will hear me say this multiple times. Tony Robbins says this multiple times. It's 90% mindset and 10% tactics or strategy or technique. 90% mindset. Well, what does that mean? Because what does mindset mean anyway? So we're going to talk about some of the mindset aspects that I think really play into this. So that's really what we're doing. So the first lesson of this incredible week is all around belief. Belief. It was said over and over again that that's step 1. You must have that knowingness level of belief. A belief in yourself, a belief in your product, and a belief in your plan. That is going to carry you further than anything else, people. Anything else, in my opinion. Do a gut check right now. Do you, once you know what you want, we all know what we want. Sometimes we're just afraid to say it. Well, there's a lack of belief right there because we don't think we can have it. But once you know what you want to do that gut check. Do I believe in myself? Do I believe I can do this? Do I believe I can have this? Do I believe I deserve this? So belief in yourself, it always is the first piece. And by the way, I'm going into this. They just talk about belief. Like you have to believe in the system in order for it to work. I'm just going a little deeper now, right? From my own take on things. Belief in your product. You can't sell something you don't believe in. And that's going to trip people up, right? Because, well, how could I believe in it if I've never sold it before? Or, how could I really believe in it? And when I have some people who love it and some people who don't. Well, I may not, go into the antidote, but we will say that the first step is that you have to have that belief in your product, in your offer, in what you sell. You have to believe. The curious thing to ponder here is, does having a belief in your product improve its effectiveness? Interesting. that's something to ponder. Does increasing, because it's all the placebo effect, you want to go Google placebo effect, it'll blow your mind. Does believing that taking a pill that's just filled with sugar and water, that's intended to get rid of your headache, increase the chances of getting rid of the headache? Does believing in your product increase the effectiveness of the results that it will have for your customers? Something to ponder. And the third is belief in your plan, the strategy, whatever it is you're doing, right? Maybe it is like doing a product launch. Maybe it is a promotion. Maybe it's something else entirely. You're doing a webinar. You're doing this. You're creating a podcast. Belief in the plan. This will work.
See, I took it I thought you meant belief in your like vision, your big vision and that plan. I didn't realize you meant belief in like the actual strategy, how you're going to get to whatever your goal is.
Well, okay. So I think we're just need some little tweaking here, because to me, a vision is the outcome. Like another way to come up with your vision would be to say, what do you want your life and your business to look like when it's done? You know, people are saying, well, I'm building my business. I'm growing this. Okay, when it's done growing and it's done building, when it's been built and it's been grown to full maximumness, what does that look like? And the answer to that is usually something reminiscent of a vision. Like, well, it'll have this type of impact. It'll feel like this. It'll have this. It'll do this. It'll make me that. And then it's like, great. Now that you have your vision, step one, do you believe in yourself that you can do that? Do you believe you have what it takes? And number two, or three in this case, do you believe in the plan that you're going to have to put in place to achieve that vision?
Yep, got it.
The series of action steps needed or required to accomplish the results that will yield your vision. Mm-hmm. And if your vision includes having a amazing event or product or training system or software, that's your product. Do you believe in that? Right? So belief is huge, and it was echoed throughout the 3 days of the event. So everyone who was at the event is like nodding their head like, yes. It was said over and over again, like everything is like, listen, you have to be able to trust and believe first. So that's the first one.
Well, the thing that I find the most interesting, I think, about the fact that belief came up so much is that I know Denise Duffield Thomas says new level, new devil. And so I know that, you know, people think that as soon as they hit the 6-figure mark or hit the 7-figure mark, that all of a sudden this belief switch just flips on. And I think it's really interesting that, you know, people still struggle with that. Even, you know, you or some of these like 9-figure business owners are still like, oh yeah, like, you know, either I struggled with that, or like I overcame it, but still it's never going to go away. You know, I think you just kind of, in my experience, you just, you know, you kind of get through it and then you deal with the next one and then you kind of keep moving along the chain or the continuum maybe.
I mean, totally, because there's something else that is new for you that because it's new, there might be doubt there. I don't believe I deserve that. I mean, that's crazy. So another way to look at this too, which is just such a fascinating observation. I think I've told this story before, but when I first created my very first product on the internet, bartendforprofit.com, I don't even think the site's up anymore. bartend _for_. When I first created that, I was so proud. I was so excited. I was so ready to just get this out there. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I remember showing friends. We were at a party back when I went to parties still. We went to a computer and I pressed play on this video that I created on the sales page. And when I was finished, I stopped the video and I was so ready for people to just be like, oh, wow. And this girl just laughed, like uncontrollable laugh. There's very few times in my life, if any, where I've had an experience where in person, like I did something. Like it would be like creating a piece of art and being like, I want to show you this painting I made. And then you show it and people just start laughing at you. Oh, no. This person is just laughing at me like they thought this was a total joke. Like I have people laugh at me because I'll like say the wrong thing and trip and fall or something and do stupid stuff, but not like here's something I've created. And they just, you know, at that time, what I'm getting at here, folks, in my long-winded story here, is that back then, 2007, 2008, the level of belief of making money on the internet, of having an online business, of selling something like this was so ridiculous that laughter was the natural reaction, that's what you could expect from the average person. So many examples of people in my life who just didn't understand, who just couldn't believe it. And I don't know what, maybe it was going to these events that I was like, there's enough people that I see who are doing it. I know it's possible. And you walk into that room and it's not a conversation. This is huge for people to get. It's not a conversation anymore of this could work. It is possible. It's when are you going to do this and how much are you going to make? How big are you going to make this? How high are you going to go with this? That is such a different conversation from this, like, there is this thing where you could maybe make this happen. It is like and so the level of belief across the board in the industry has just shifted so much that it's just like, okay, can I set aside the time to do this? Or should I do something else? And that is so amazing to me, like being in this industry for that long, to see that the overall consciousness of the industry, not just the industry has grown, but the belief has increased so much because there's so many people who have done it that now it's easier. And like the amount of people that shared their stories of what they've done just in the last like 6 months, a year, is just amazing. So belief is key. All right, I got to move on. I still got a bunch of others to talk about. Here's the second lesson, takeaway, valuable insight that I want to share with you, and that is the power of relationships. Now, okay, wow, that's a real big takeaway there, James. Okay, but you could never, ever, ever be done speaking about the importance of relationships on so many levels. But in this context, we're going to talk about really the power of like joint venture and affiliate relationships. And, because I want to talk about another one that is like really about community and support, which is important too. But they brought up this concept of the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. We've talked about that here before, that 20% of your affiliates will generate 80% of your revenue. But they really, a lot of them, which we don't do that big JV and affiliate stuff, but it's really like a 95-5. And I think this is key to bring up. I think this is really important. It's great to have a support group. It's great to have your own stable traffic and promotional strategies like social media and paid advertising. But when you can align yourself with the right people, it can make a world of difference. And in both ways, right? Not just for people, oh, come on, I need more people promoting me, but to align yourself with someone that you can promote. I love recommending my favorite products and software. This was just so hammered in as such a key component. And this is something that is nothing new. This is nothing revolutionary, but it never hurts to have a reminder of how important relationships are in your life and in your business.
Yeah, and I think also just taking it from, especially when you're affiliating for somebody, it's like you actually get to introduce them to your audience because they serve their product or service actually serves a purpose to your audience. And I think that's really important to realize that you're actually benefiting your audience by promoting events. It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to make 50%, I'm going to make all this money. It's like, no, you get to actually serve and be of service to your audience. And that was something I feel like I had to get because I was like, oh, how selfish. Like, I'm making money when people buy that. And I was like, no, if you change it and you're like, no, by promoting this person, I now get to, people see me as a source of information or a source of, maybe inspiration. I don't know. But being able to serve my audience in a bigger way than I could, I think was a huge mental shift I had to make.
Yeah, I love it. Let's get into lesson or takeaway number 3 from this week, which is an invitation to play bigger. Now, this is one of the benefits of going to the right event, is that you're just around people. You're in an environment of individuals who, a lot of which, especially the ones who are on stage, are at a whole nother level. And that naturally, you are the sum of your 5 closest friends. You are naturally pulled to that level. Even just 1% of you is. You start to feel like, wait a second, I could do this. If they can do it, I can do it. There goes that belief again, right? And the beauty of the 5-day experience that I had going from the mastermind into the 3-day event with 900 people is all the examples of people playing bigger. And I want to see how in this episode right now I can, capture and bottle that essence and give that to you, because it's such a gift that doesn't really get transferred very often. And so there are a couple examples of this that I really want to say, what does playing bigger look like to you? Are you playing small? Are you stuck in your comfort zone? Are you scared to death of what you think is going to happen when you take a step out? And I want to give some examples of people who are playing full out, who are shining brightly, who are kicking ass, and these people are giving us permission to do the same. And that's huge. That's huge. So one of the things that they mentioned, now I'm familiar with this term, but they shared it at the event, is something called what they call a Sparta offer. And the Sparta offer is the simplest, easiest strategy for selling something like you've never sold before. The Sparta offer is this beautiful term for basically embodying this idea of having a ridiculous offer. Good ridiculous. Like, talk about comfort zone, see you later, right? Like times 100. And so they were sharing examples of how they were selling $10,000 to $15,000 to $25,000 offers and the way in which they did that. And it really came from this, there was this really premise that was left of saying, you don't know who's on your list. Stop letting your audience and your list play small. You want to play big, invite them to play big. And when we make these assumptions like, oh, my list can't afford that and they would never buy this, you're not giving them a chance to make their own decisions. And that's the beautiful thing. Like when you fix your mindset and the energy around an offer where it feels really clean for you to make any offer, there's a massive shift where it's like, listen, you're not manipulating anybody. You're not forcing anybody. You're not putting a gun to their head and saying, give me this $20,000 or else. You're just saying, this is what I've got. This is what it will do for you. And it's going to cost $20,000. Take it or leave it. And so that was just beautiful, right? To just like give permission to make that crazy offer. And so people are talking about offers about, like 2 days with me in some exotic location. So they shared an example, actually, and I'll try and remember the example as much as possible. A woman who was just like so freaked out to do this. And she's a yoga instructor. And so she said, she went back, she thought about it, and she says, what I really want to do is go to India. And it would cost $8,000 for me to go to India. I'll make an offer for $8,000, which she'd never done anything over like $50 before, right? I'll make an offer for $8,000, and that'll pay for my trip to India. Awesome. So she puts out the offer, and she ended up having...
She was at the conference?
Not this conference. It was someone telling about when they taught it to somebody, one of their students. And I can't remember the exact number, but she ended up having like 6 or 7 people, maybe more, sign up for it and go to India with her. Now it's this trip she runs every year. And, I want to give everyone permission to play bigger, to what does that Sparta offer look like for you in your business?
Do you know what that is for you? Have you had time to kind of...
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Like we role play, we did a team debrief every night. And so we said, if we were going to do this, what would it look like? And we start first from what would it look like to make it worth it for us? And it would have to be 3 days, minimum $60,000. Now, what I mean is that's how much we'd have to generate total from it. And so what we were thinking of is how do we do a small group of people, like 3 to 6, and it's 3 days in an exotic location, all those expenses taken care of, and it's a place where we get to travel and have fun. And we would do something very high level, like we'd have like a copywriter there and like another person to not just map out a high 6-figure or 7-figure launch, but like start getting stuff done. I almost cussed on the podcast. Start getting stuff done, right? So that was kind of what we came up with. So it's this experience where they're like in a very open, spacious, different location, like it's a retreat wise, but like you're working with a team and a couple other people that are there as well to map out a high 6-figure launch to 7-figure. So that's what we do. So it's very specific that has a very high yield. That was our idea. So how else can you play bigger? Not just raising your prices or having a bigger offer to offer people, but launching more often, or having back-end offers for people, buyers, or people who didn't buy, more offers and more often. That's the question you really want to start with, though, is what would it look like for me to play bigger? Okay.
Well, and one thing I'm going to say is I was just at an event at the same time that you were at, and something that I got as far as playing bigger was not necessarily, a financial thing, but one of my key takeaways was playing bigger in terms of like the charitable aspect. And this guy was there and he runs this foundation, and he was talking to us about how, partnering with a charity can be such a, not necessarily lucrative, but like, personally lucrative. People really know that they're making a difference. And that was for some reason, I kind of disassociate charity with business. And he really came from a place of like, why don't we marry the two? And how can that happen? And so that was, when I look at like playing bigger, I was like, that is huge for me, because both of those are so important to me. And I haven't seen anyone do it really that well that I've been a part of, especially in the last year or so. So having him kind of pushing back a little bit on kind of our plans and strategies moving forward, and him being like, well, why couldn't you do this? And just kind of questioning and having someone to bounce ideas off was, just really huge for me, especially. And I know a lot of people had talked about that was one of the most valuable things we got out of the week as well.
I love that. And it, to share a great example from the event I was at was that Stu McLaren and his wife, Amy, run a charity, World Teacher Aid. And they were there at LaunchCon raising money. And it really is like Stu's mindset around this is just like at a whole nother level. He's about his premise that he really stands for. And by the way, I'm going to beg and plead to get him on the podcast, because he shared from stage as he's sharing about his charity, which they build schools in Kenya, which we're going to be going to this next year. He really talked about how the blocks he had around money and what he did to sabotage himself. And he said his ultimate cure was having this charity, because he realized the more money I make, the more impact I create and get to have. The more I get to give, the more I get to help. So his whole belief, what he stands for, is giving away 90% of his money, but that he makes so much money that 10% that he keeps is still amazing.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like that's playing at a level like unprecedented. So what they did, which was really great, because they've raised a ton of money through Jeff Walker and the Jeff Walker community. So I know they did over $250,000 last year, and I don't know what the final number was. It was unbelievable. Like the morning of the next day, it was like they'd raised over $150,000. Wow. And what's really smart, what he does is, just to echo what you learned from the event you were at, is he basically made an offer from stage. And he says, if you donate this, I'm going to give you that. You donate this, and I'm going to give you that. And one of the things that he donated, or, if you donate, one of the offers that he made was a 2-day mastermind with him and a few of his super smart buddies. So one of those is going to be me. So I'm actually really excited to hang out with all those donors. So, and go to Africa with Stu, because I think what they're doing is just like, it's mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. So, and they've been doing it a long time. Okay, so let's move on. You've got your belief. You're building relationships. You're playing bigger. What else do we need? We absolutely need, this is takeaway number 4, community and support. I just can't stress that enough. Like, I have to stress it a lot because I'm the stubborn introvert that, my mantra was, I can do this all myself. I can figure this out. I got this. And like years of that, right? And it's like cheating. You go to an event like this, you hang out with people like this, and you just shortcut everything. And you learn it so much faster. You get an awareness of like what's working now and what's going on now so much faster than anything else. Go talk to someone who just finished up a launch and just say like, what were your biggest 3 takeaways? And that 5-minute conversation, the answer to that question will be like the most valuable thing you've ever had, that most valuable conversation. But you need that support because you can't do it alone. And my experience from this, just to really echo this, so you need that support somewhere, is that, I've always had a support system. I've always been a part of a mastermind. There's always been people I can, speed dial. But however, the experience I was really having, and I've had this before, trying not to come from an egotistical standpoint, but like you feel good. You're like, you feel accomplished. You feel like, okay, I made it. And that happens when we accomplish the goals we've set out for ourselves. But this is what you also call no man's land, which is like you're kind of complacent. And how much else, going back to belief, well, what else could I really do? What else is really possible? So I kind of felt at the top in my little world. Then you get into this group, which has now been a year, and all of a sudden I'm like, I feel at the bottom in a good way. I mean, you're sitting next to people, one of which their company did 36 launches or something in 1 year.
Oh my God.
And doing 8 figures, 9, 10 figures. It's just unbelievable, right? So you're just like, oh my goodness. You need that, whatever that is, to the raised bar, that raised level, so that you continue to stretch. Now, you're not stretching too far, but you're stretching enough. Like, to bring someone in who's brand new and go in that group, it's too much. You know what I mean? So you got to have that right amount of stretch. You know, the flow books talk about this, and other people talk about, like, well, how much do you stretch percentage-wise? But just enough where you feel the pull that gets you out of no man's land and into a place of, like, re-inspired, reignited. Like, oh my goodness. You know, and our big goal that's really had us stretched and pulled is a 7-figure launch without affiliates, like a non-affiliate internal 7-figure launch. And that's a big one. That's not easy. And obviously it's just a number, but that pulls me. That has me inspired. So the community is essential. And I know people say, yeah, I'm in a Facebook group. Is that really a community? Well, yeah, of course it is. I'm not saying it's not, but it might be time to really question that. Are these people that, like, okay, you can just ask a question in there? Are these people you can get on the phone with and, like, talk to for an hour and feel like they're family or best friends? You need that. You really do. I think it's just so important. It goes back to the belief, too. Like, what do? We doubt ourselves. We need others who believe in us.
Yeah, and just sitting around, like, I had this experience the first, couple minutes that I was at this, initial dinner, the welcome dinner, and all these people started coming in. I was like, oh my gosh, I know him from, I followed this guy and he was on stage at the Archangel Summit. And he's, a big deal. And he's sitting next to me and we're having, a beer and a conversation. And I was like, you are just so normal. Like, it was just really nice to talk, and I'm a big I like to touch things. So I'm like, oh, you're like a real person. And we can have conversations that kind of bridge that gap. And, it doesn't matter where you are. Like, for me, looking at this guy, I was like, you know what? In that moment, I made a decision to really just 100% be myself. And, that's kind of weird and a little bit quirky. And yeah, I say the wrong things all the time. And like, I just was laughing. And in that laughter, he and I both were like, okay, we get it. Like, we're the same person, we're dealing with the same issues. And it was just so nice to, we had the whole conversation about, the loneliness of entrepreneurship and how, pulling people together really does just ignite something in you that's like, yes, if he can do it, he's just as like foul-mouthed or inappropriate or, just funny. And it's just so nice to like have those conversations where you really do feel connected to people. And for me, that's what live events, that's the best thing I can get out of it. And that I have gotten out of it, especially I think I've been one of these event junkies this year. I loved every second of it.
So before we go into our last one, I want to just take a quick look back at what we're doing in this episode. It's, hanging out with some very successful people, and not just hanging out with those successful people, but seeing the impact that they're having on the audience. Like, that's what I think was really amazing, right? To see people walk away like totally inspired, totally like impacted. I'm boiling it down for you into 5 things that I think are huge ingredients. There's the belief. There's having phenomenal relationships. It's a desire and a fearlessness to play bigger. Having that support backbone, that community. And that's the thing, is like, it's easy in business to just measure success and everything by the revenue, but that makes it easy. But it's great to see people in this community who have high incomes, but also like they're happy, they're likable, they're well-rounded, they're healthy. So success in a lot of ways. And I think this is what it takes. And so this isn't really like how to get to 7 figures, but how to feel more like what ingredients there are that are holistically making someone successful and happy. Here's the last one that I wanted to share. Big takeaway, a little on a different path. This is empathy. So, the adage we've shared before is if you want to make more money, solve bigger problems and reach more people. And if you do that with empathy. This should be a discipline for the rest of your career as an entrepreneur, is to know your audience better than they know themselves. Know the internal and external conflicts, pain, problems. What do they say to themselves? How do they feel about what they say to themselves? How do they view themselves? What are they worried about how others view themselves? And the more that we can tap into them and let them know we know what it's like, the more you'll thrive. And it's not just with customers. It's with your entire audience. It's with the community that you create. It's with the JV relationships you create. It's about making an attempt to understand people and their situation and what they're going through and truly, genuinely care about them. And I think people see that, and I think that's what really matters. So there were great, conversations brought up around that theme that really branch out into so many things. Things like proper copywriting and script writing, for videos and stuff. And then also getting into things like segmenting, which Ryan Levesque, author of Ask, did a great presentation on this, where, that's where the future of marketing is going, is being able to tailor your messages, segment your audiences into different sequences where you're talking to those individual pain points and individual frustration. Because that's the only reason why it's hard to have the empathy for someone, is because you're talking to many, not just one. It's easy to sit across the table from someone or listen to someone on the phone and say, wow, I really get what you're going through. I think I can help. It's a lot harder to do that when you're trying to talk to 1,000 people or more at once. And so I think to stay ahead of things and to continue thriving, you're going to need to start looking at ways in which you can talk to those people differently. And I think that's just so important. So to look at these things one more time, to recap them, the biggest things that I take away that I want to share with you, obviously I have pages of notes of really cool strategies and copy tips and, ninja little tactics, but, those will come and go, and we'll forget about them anyways. They'll become outdated and stuff like that. But the timeless things that we can embody or begin to embody is a unwavering belief in ourselves, our product, and our plan, fostering incredible, extraordinary relationships, have a relentless desire to constantly play bigger, surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, have the support system that has your back, and of course, lead from a place of empathy and understanding. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, another episode of the Mind Your Business podcast. I'm James Wedmore.
I'm Phoebe Mroczek.
And we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Are you frustrated that no matter how hard you hustle, no matter how much you get done in a day, you still feel like you have little results to show for it? Do you feel like you're doing everything right, but there's still something missing? Well, what if there was an easier way? What if your business could be fun, effortless, and profitable? Phoebe and I have put together a free audio MP3 for you, compiling the 77 business affirmations for creating success from the inside out. And we want to give it to you absolutely free. This is your chance to rewire your brain for bigger results in your life and your business. To get instant access absolutely free, simply visit 77affirmations.com. That's the number 77affirmations.com.